Hello there, hello there. Today I would want us to do something. If you are a BDA student, this session will be very helpful to you. And even if you are not a BDA student, this session here is good to refreshen and to ignite your interest to learn more about Excel and also to learn more about how you can manipulate data and how you can get different outputs. Now, today I would want us to handle a question here. You can see this is a BDA mock paper. So if you're a BDA student, kindly this session will be very helpful to you. And the question I have here is a question asking about capital budgeting. If you are doing financial management or advanced financial management, this concept you must be able to remember, you know it. And here I am going to take you through on how to compute the various matrices like the payback period, net present value, and profitability index. And interestingly, there is the second part asking you to, using a graph, determine the project's internal rate of return. So this is a beautiful question, and you can see you're going to score a whooping 30 marks. How interesting is it? Very interesting. So let me show you how you can be able to go about such a question. The question says, Safaricom Limited is evaluating a project with the following details. Initial investment is 100 million. Residual value is 10 million. Let me just zoom my screen so that it can be big enough. Okay. We've been given year one project cash flows, then annual cash flow growth rate from year two at 10%, then project life is 5 years. Required, compute the following project metrics: a payback period, net present value, assuming a discount rate of 12%, profitability index, assuming a discount rate of 12% also. Then, using a graph, determine the project's internal rate of return, totaling to 30 marks. So there we go. I would want us to do a solution here. I would want us to do solution here so that we get to see how to go about such a question. So now, I would want us to start from the project evaluation techniques. When you are doing financial management and also in the advanced financial management, because this is a shared concept, you realize you learned something about project evaluation. What is project evaluation? This is where, as a firm or as a company, you want to invest in a project, and then you ask yourself whether the project is viable or not. So there are various techniques that are normally employed to be able to, to come up with that, to make a decision whether you would go ahead to invest in that project or not. That's why we call it project evaluation technique. And especially these projects we talk about here, they are very capital intensive. They involve a lot of resources. So as an investor, as a business person, you would not want to sink your money where you are not assured if you're going to recover your investment and also get a profit on top. So these techniques, they normally help to evaluate, to advise whether the project is viable or not viable, whether you need to go ahead and invest or not. So when you are doing financial management or advanced financial management, you discussed two types or maybe two categories of project evaluation techniques. There were discounting techniques, and then there were also these non-discounting project evaluation techniques. And I'm not here to explain these project evaluation techniques because that should be a whole session, of which even one session cannot be able to exhaust all of it. I'm just touching on it so that we can relate. We can see the relationship between project evaluation techniques done under financial management and advanced financial management, their relation to application in BDA, which is business data analytics. So this is the practical application part of that theory part, yeah, of the theory knowledge. So here, discounting techniques are mostly we do the net present values. the profitability index, and many others. Then, non-discounting techniques are techniques that you do not go ahead to discount your cash flows. So we will be able to cover most of these discounting and undiscounted techniques in the other sessions that will continue. So here we want to do payback period, net present value, and profitability index, and also IRR. So as we'll be moving forward, you'll be able to get the relationship of the theoretical part and application in BDA. Now, there we go. So we want to compute the following project payback period. So I would want us to start with payback period. That is the first item that we're supposed to compute. Payback period. How do you compute payback period? Using the data given. And remember, we've been given something interesting here. Now, initial investment is 100 million. So I will just write there initial investment. Initial investment is 100 million, like that. So initial investment is 100 million, like that. So here, let me just put the comma style. Then I reduce the number of decimal places, like that. That is 100 million. Then residual value have been given as 10 million. Yeah. And year one project cash flows is 25 million. Annual cash flow growth rate from year two is 10%. Then, interestingly, remember, we've been given project life is 5 years. So this project is starting from year one, whose cash flow is 25 million. Then the project will take 5 years, right? So now what I would want us to do here, before we calculate the payback period, we need to get our net cash flows. That is one of the areas, that is one of the aspects that we have to get. How do we get to arrive at the net cash flows? It is the net cash flows that will be able now to either discount, compute the payback period, and do the other metrics as given. So the first thing to do is to get the periods. And initial investment is normally done in period 0 because it is what starts off. This is your money that you're putting in, and this is the initial stage. So from year 1 is where now we are going to get the cash flows. So I would want to come from year 1. I would want to list the years from year 1 to year number 5. So when you are learning about advanced Excel, there is a concept that you are going to apply here, and you can see annual cash flow growth rate from year 2 is 10%. So we are going to see how are you going to apply the growth rate in cash flows. And this one, with Excel knowledge, it will make your work very easy. And we are doing the application part of it as we solve this problem here. So with the years listed from year 0 to year number 5, like that, initial investment, we can see it's the 100 million, and initial investment is an outflow. So I would want to put it there as a negative. It is an outflow. So I will put it as a negative. Then we start with cash flows. So we go to cash flows. Now, if you look at the cash flows, we've been given cash flow for year 1 at 25 million. So I would just use the millions because the data we are dealing with is not so wide. So we are not going to maybe round off our figures to nearest thousands or millions. So let's just work with the whole figures the way they've been given. So cash flow for year 1 is 25 million. And you've been told here by the examiner, annual cash flow growth rate from year number 2 is 10%, right? So how do we apply growth rate? Advanced Excel knowledge will become handy here, and forecasting. So we are going to apply 10% growth rate to what? To the 25 million as from year 2 to year number 5. How are we going to do that? Come to the cell cash flow under year 2. Put an equal sign. Then we are going to apply the growth rate in 2 ways. You go with the one you're comfortable with. So one of the approaches to apply the growth rate of 10% is to use brackets. The second way is to go direct, and you see if you are a growth rate means the value is growing to become bigger, if I can use the layman's explanation. So you'll just get, if you are applying a growth rate of 10%, add your 10% to 100%. You'll be having 110%. Now, this 110% is what you subject to the previous year's cash flow, which is now year one. You multiply it by 110% because you are increasing it, you are growing it, so that you get cash flows for year two. Then you do again, when you want cash flows for year three, you also subject the growth rate to the cash flows in year two to get the cash flows in year three, which should be higher than what you have in year two, because the cash flow is growing at the rate of 10% in the successive years up to year number five, right? So I would want to apply the two approaches so that you see first approach and second approach and how it gives us the cash flow figures across the years. Good. Now, let us use the first approach. Open a bracket, 1 plus the growth rate, and our growth rate is 10%. So there are also two ways. You can either type the 10% manually. When you type in the 10% like I've just done, you are just doing an absolute referencing. You are locking that figure in a way. And if I could have written the 10% in a different cell, which I'm going to do that so that you see, you will have to fully lock it because it's not going to change. And this will help us to drag along that formula from year two to year number five. We don't have to do the same in all the years. We are applying advanced Excel knowledge, and we do not have to do the formulas in all the cells. It will be so tedious. Now, after when I type 1 plus 10%, this one, Excel understands it as 100% plus 10%. Then I'm subjecting it, that growth rate, I'm subjecting it to the cash flow in year one, which is 25 million, like that. So when I hit on Control Enter, you can see my cash flow in year two is now 27,500. And up to this point, I do not have to repeat the same in year three, year four, and year five. I will just grab the tail of the angry rabbit, then drag it to year number five, like that. So I have my figures auto-filled to the end, and I have my cash flows already generated. That is first approach. The second way to apply the growth rate, like I just mentioned, put an equal sign where from the year two cash flows, then you will add the 10% growth rate to 100%. That will give you 110%, and you convert it to decimals. What is 110% into decimal will be 1.1, right? So that 1.1, just multiply it by the previous year's cash flow. And there you go. I will just hit on enter, and there you go. So I will just autofill, and you'll see that the cash flows using the first approach of opening a bracket and this other approach of adding the 10% on top of 100 will still give us the same cash flows to the end of year five. Again, there is another approach where I want to do an absolute referencing. You can go with the either approach. I can go and do absolute referencing, and for me to do absolute referencing, I will write or type in the 10% here, there. Then I want to grow the cash flows from year one by the 10% across the years. So what I'm going to do, I can just go ahead and put an equal sign here, open a bracket, then say 1 plus the 10%. And I told you 1 means 100% by the 10%. Then because of that, I will have to fully fix it to do an absolute reference because it's not going to change. So to truly fix it, I'm using F4 key or function F4 key. Or if you opt to go manually, like in the previous Excel lessons that we've covered here, you'll practically or maybe physically insert the dollar signs before the cell reference, before the column, and before the row reference figures there. So I close that bracket, and then I multiply that by the previous year's cash flow, which I'm growing. So if I hit on Control Enter, you will see I have the same cash flow. And because I've fully fixed the growth rate, I do not have to repeat the same in all the other cells. I will just drag it along, and you will attest to it that all the cash flows we are getting when we subject the growth rate using different approaches, we are having the same or similar figures of cash flows. Choose whichever approach is easier for you. So I will just do away with these ones because I've just explained, and then we have the cash flows. Now, if you go back to our question, we've already subjected the cash flows to the growth rate which we've been given. Then project life is obvious 5 years, and you can see we've gone to 5 years. Now, how do we get our net cash flows? And up to this point, we've not been given a tax rate. So without the tax rate, we do not have to even compute anything to do with depreciation, or we do not have to deduct any tax implications on that. So that means what? We have these cash flows which we have from the projections. These are our net cash flows. Because we do not have any other factors affecting them, they will be our net cash flows. So we do not have to worry about anything else. So these are our net cash flows. I did wrong highlighting. I think that is it. So our net cash flows from year 0 to year number 5 are there like that. So I will just put them in bold. Yeah, I do not have to underline them anyway. So with our net cash flows, I would want us to compute payback period. How do we compute payback period? From the knowledge in advanced financial management and financial management in intermediate level, you know payback period means the period it will take you to recover your initial investment. How long will you take to get back what you've invested? In this case, this investor here has invested 100 million. So how long will it take this investor who is Safari Limited to get back their 100 million before they start earning profits? So we will come here and get the cumulative cash flows, the cash flow we are getting, what we are getting in year 1, what we are getting in year 2, successively to year number 5, and see at what point are we going to get back our 100 million before we start making profits. You get that? Project evaluation technique. That is the essence. There we go. So up to this point, what I would want us to do to make our work easy to make it easy to understand, I want to bring years here, and then I want to bring the cash flows. And the cash flows I'm talking about are the net cash flows in our case here. Now, the years and the cash flows, then I would want us to also get the cumulative cash flows. I would want us to also get the cumulative cash flows. Now, as we do the cumulative cash flows at this point, I want us also to apply the advanced Excel knowledge so that to make this easier. Now, how do we do it? Instead of coming here to type again year 0, year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, you just come and copy the years. And because this one is appearing in a horizontal format, I will want to make it in vertical format. We are going to apply Excel. So I will just come and copy them. Then I want them now to appear in this column. What will I do? I've just copied. I will come to paste. Then I will transpose so that they appear in the columnar format. Yeah. So there we go. Also, I'll do the same to cash flows. Now, our net cash flows are here. Our net cash flows are here, and you can see they're the same as this. The reason why I want to pick them from this point, but let me just pick the net cash flows because I know someone will ask, why am I not picking the net cash flows? So I want to copy the net cash flows, and then before I paste, you remember we've just input a formula there. So I want to remove the formula that we've used to get this one. You can see when I talk about a formula, do you see the summation formula that I've put in there? That is the formula I'm talking about. So to make my work easy so that I do not have to work with the formulas moving to this other cash flow, because I want to use transpose to bring them over, I would want to copy them, and then I want to remove the formula. How do I remove it? I want to paste figures. So once I've done that, my formulas are gone. Can you see that? Beautiful. So I will just come and copy them now without the formulas. I've removed the formula. Then I will come and bring them down here. Now in the column arrangement, I will transpose them. And there we have our cash flows. So I would go ahead and do the cumulative cash flows in that manner. So how do I do the cumulative cash flows? Cumulative cash flows, I would just come here. And I will get the cash flows in year 0, which is an outflow. Then cumulative for year 1, I will go and get the cumulative in year 0. Then what I'm receiving in year 1 is that one. So the approach I'm giving here, we are looking at when are we going to recover back our 100 million investment in year 0. So in year 1, I'm getting a cash flow of 25 million coming in. This is an inflow. So you realize that at the end of year 1, I'm still looking for 75 million. I've already received 25. So I'm looking for 75 million. At the end of year two, so if I get cumulative for year two, I will get the add the cumulative at the end of year one. Then I add it to what I'm getting at the in year two. Yeah, the cash inflow in year two. And at that point, at the end of year two, I still have 47,500,000 to look for. So you see, at the end of year two, I've not recovered back my 100. I still have a deficit of 47 million. Then I come to year three. I'm getting an inflow of 30,250,000. So at the end of year three, how much more am I looking for so that I fully recover my money? I'm looking at payback period. Now I will come here, get the cumulative at the end of year two, then I add what I'm getting in year number three, and I say at the end of year number three, I'm looking to get 17,250,000 to be able to recover back my 100 million. But then there is an inflow again at the in year four. And I want you to look at this very keenly. At the end of year three, I'm only looking for 17,250,000. But then in year four, I'm getting a cash inflow of 33 million. So what I'm going to get in year four is more than what I'm looking for. Can you be able to see that? So my payback period are in 3 full years. Then the 17 million remaining, I'm going to recover it as part of the cash flows I'm going to get in year number four. So I'm not going to take the whole cash flow in year four. I'm just going to get a portion of it. And which portion is it? It is the 17,250,000 out of the 33 to 75. So my payback period will be 3 years plus the fraction of the cash flows I'm going to recover in year four. So it is 3 years and some months. And those other months will not total to the to four to a full year, because I'm not going to recover to get all the cash flows in year four. So my payback period cannot go to 4 years. It is 3 years and some months which overlaps to year four, right? So how to compute the payback period? We will come here. We say we have 3 full years. We'll recover our investment in 3 full years and some months, yeah? And which are the months now? And now the amount we are still looking to recover in year four is 17,250,000, and this is a fraction of the cash flows in year number four. We're just going to get a fraction. So up to that point, my payback period will be 3.52. 3.52. Yeah, so that is the payback period in that question. 3.3.52. That is the payback period. 3.52. I believe we are together. And in the next session, we are going to do the other remaining project matrices. We are going to do the NPV and then profitability index, then using a graph to determine the project's internal rate of return. So at this point, for now, let's stop it at that. Next time, we are going to do the second part. Thank you. See you in the next one. Please kindly, if you've not subscribed to this channel so that you get more of this content, please hit the like button, hit the follow button so that you'll be able to get a notification when I upload the same contents like this. Thank you.